Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of September 8th, 2015. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the floral arrangement they always provide for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Marc, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of brief announcements this evening. First of all, the city will hold a 5-year remembrance event on September 9th, 2015. That's tomorrow evening. Information is available on the city website, www.sanbruno.ca.gov. It will be held at 6 o'clock in the Glenview area, and it will be similar to what we did the last numbers of years. We have 5 years to remember. Thank you. Also, the annual Coastal Cleanup event will be held September 19, 2015 from 9 a.m. to noon. To participate, meet at Posey Park next to the Caltrain station at 9 a.m. And one more announcement that's not in here. The city will again be hosting the Community Day in the park at City Park. This year's event will be from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, October the 10th. Much like last year, there will be rides, a larger assortment of food, musical entertainment, and field games for children of all ages. $10 ride wristbands will go on sale next week at the Recreation Center, and we hope you will attend and share a day of community with your family, friends, and neighbors. We do have one presentation this evening, and this is to present a proclamation declaring September as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And I will read this. National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month 2015. Whereas prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in men aside from skin cancer, and it is estimated that 1 in 7 men will develop this disease in their lifetime. And whereas the American Cancer Society estimates there will be 220,800 new cases of prostate cancer in the United States in 2015, resulting in an estimated 27,540 deaths. And whereas early prostate cancer usually has no symptoms and studies suggest strong familiar predisposition may be responsible for 5 to 10% of the disease cases, and recent studies suggest that a diet high in processed meat or dairy foods may be a risk factor, and obesity appears to increase risk of aggressive prostate cancer. And whereas the survival rate approaches 100% when prostate cancer is diagnosed and treated early, but drops to 28% when it spreads to other parts of the body. Now, therefore, I, Jim Ruane, the Mayor of the City of San Bruno, do hereby proclaim September 2015 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the City of San Bruno, and urge all men in our community and throughout the country to become aware of their own risk of prostate cancer, talk to their healthcare providers about prostate cancer, and whenever appropriate, get screened for the disease. So I'm going to present this to me because I'm a survivor. I'm one of the 100% early detected people, 17 and a half years. And so thank you very much on behalf of the City of San Bruno. So everybody get checked. Yeah. Review of the agenda. Anything with the agenda? Okay. Item number 6, approval of the minutes of a regular council meeting of August 25th, 2015. Any errors, corrections, or omissions? All right.
Through the chair.
Ken?
Yeah, I mentioned to the city clerk that to make a change to my comments on a parking survey. It was inadvertently stated as a park survey, so I didn't want any future confusion on that. She's already taken note of it.
So noted.
So noted. All right. Approval of the minutes as submitted with things so noted. Very good. The consent calendar, all items are considered routine or implemented earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. Any action on the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar on the question. I just have one minor thing. In addition to the item F here, which is the resolution accepting the water pump station number 4 is complete. There will be a dedication on September 22nd at 5:30 p.m. at the site. So that's the only addition to item F. On the question, anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 8, public hearings. We're going to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution. Number 1, certifying the final supplemental environmental impact report to the U.S. Navy site and its environment-specific plan amendment, and adopting environmental findings and a mitigation monitoring reporting program. And number 2, approving an amendment to the U.S. Navy site and its environs-specific plan related to the Crossing Hotel site. David?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item before you tonight is consideration of an amendment to the Navy Site and Environment Specific Plan that was adopted in 2001, as well as a supplemental environmental impact report that was prepared for the proposed specific plan amendment. I'd like to point out that the purpose of this agenda item is to consider amending U.S. Navy Site and Environment's specific plan, as well as certification of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report, SEIR. This agenda item is not for the purpose of considering any specific development project or projects, or financial aspects or implications of any possible development project or projects. So with that, I'd like to proceed with the staff report. The Navy site and its environment-specific plan, the specific plan being considered for amendment, was adopted in 2001 and was fully evaluated in an accompanying environmental impact report that was accepted and certified for the adoption of this specific plan. The Navy site specific plan area comprises about 20 acres of land on the west side of El Camino Real across from the shops at Tanforan. It's in the northwest quadrant of Highway 380 and El Camino Real. The intent of the specific plan was to create a mixed-use, transit-oriented development that would also be pedestrian-friendly. The idea was to include a broad range, a broad variety of land uses, both residential and commercial, and to include a hotel use as a key component that could support important meeting and gathering needs and interests of the San Bruno community. The hotel was seen as a very important aspect of the land use scheme for this planning area. The original specific plan allowed for development of a hotel project up to about 7 stories and up to about 500 rooms on a 5.5 acre site. Additionally, it was envisioned that there could be up to 15,000 square feet of supporting commercial space, including meeting rooms and a restaurant, a full-service restaurant. This larger hotel opportunity never gained market support. And as occurs at times with changing economic conditions, there were requests for amendments to this specific plan along the way. For example, in 2001, the city approved an amendment to allow flex office and residential sites within the specific plan area because of extremely weak commercial office conditions. This amendment allowed for the construction of a significant amount of housing in the plan area. 1,063 multiple family housing units were constructed in the plan area, including 325 affordable housing units, 228 of those units being affordable to seniors here in this community. The shift to housing, however, resulted in the loss of the commercial office component and an anticipated above-ground parking garage that would have been shared in the future by a hotel. And then in 2005, there was another amendment. This amendment to the specific plan allowed for the El Camino Real commercial project that includes about 4,000 square feet of full-service dining space for Jack's Restaurant. This development is approximately 12,500 square feet in overall area. The combination of the 2001 and 2005 amendments resulted in development projects that reduced the former 5.5-acre development site for a hotel to approximately 1.5 acres. So changing economic conditions in the community during this period, a period when the originally envisioned 500-room hotel there was no market for, reduced the site from 5.5 acres to about 1.5 acres. Yet the city did see the development of about 12,500 square feet of supporting commercial space, including Jack's Restaurant, a fine dining full-service restaurant. This current specific plan amendment essentially proposes to make changes to the Navy site and its environment-specific plan to reflect the potential hotel opportunity on the smaller 1.5-acre site. Further, the city has prepared, as required by the California Environmental Quality Act, an evaluation of the smaller hotel site and potential hotel. And the CEQA review is required because of possible new information, changed conditions, etc., that may have occurred since the previously certified EIR. The specific plan amendment assumes, for evaluation purposes, the 1.5-acre site and a hotel of about 152 rooms. The CEQA evaluation prepared by the city is a detailed environmental initial study and a supplemental environmental impact report. The amendment would revise the hotel description in the land use and development standards sections of the specific plan as follows. This information is in your staff report. So, for example, the site goes from 5.5 to 1.5 acres. The hotel type goes from a full-service hotel to a select-service hotel. Number of rooms from up to 500 to up to 152. In terms of height, instead of 7 stories, we'd be looking at, say, 5 stories, 70 to 73 feet. Parking, the parking standards would be similar, but for a smaller hotel. And the assumption is that the parking would be on site, either surface parking or below grade subterranean parking. Conference and meeting space, overall commercial space, as I mentioned earlier, would have been about 15,000 square feet. As anticipated as possible, about 3,000 square feet was analyzed in the environmental impact report, the SEIR, and that would be for meetings and gatherings. And again, keep in mind that the city did see the development of 12,500 square feet of commercial space along El Camino Real. So when you put the two together, the 3,000 square feet analyzed in this environmental document for a possible future hotel with this amendment and the 12,500 square feet, that's very comparable to the 15,000 square feet of overall commercial space originally anticipated in 2001. And then the specific plan amendment assumes that a future hotel at this site would be more energy efficient, and in fact that it would include 6,000 square feet of solar photovoltaic panels on the rooftop. So what about the city's objectives as we move forward, kind of looking at the past, kind of going forward with this specific plan amendment? Again, the specific plan amendment is essentially kind of truing up changes that have been made along the way. But what have been the city's objectives in terms of the specific plan? Creating a mixed-use transit-oriented development. Creating a land-use development scheme that really helps the long-term economic vitality and sustainability of the city. Encouraging a compatible mix of land uses, housing, commercial, etc. Establishing development standards, establishing design guidelines, establishing links to other portions of the community. The general plan goals and objectives talk about similar objectives, land uses that help support nearby BART and Caltrain, that stimulate multi-use transit-oriented development, that would establish for an opportunity for a high-quality hotel and an opportunity to capture spillover economic uses from SFO. So those are some of the objectives, both in the specific plan and the general plan, that we continue to work with as we focus in on this specific plan amendment. Now, the environmental review for the specific plan amendment that we're considering tonight involved initially preparation of an initial study and then the identification of 3 possible areas where there could be potentially significant environmental impacts. Those areas are air quality, climate change and greenhouse gases, and transportation and circulation. The analysis was completed by ESA Associates along with city staff. Carl Heisler is here this evening in the audience. He was a key preparer of the document. Based on their thorough analysis with staff, it was determined with some additional mitigation measures and modifications to mitigation measures, and including an anticipated solar component on a future hotel development, that there's no anticipated significant adverse impact as a result of moving forward with the proposed specific plan amendment. This SEIR did look at alternatives, as is typical and required of an environmental document like this. There was a no project alternative. Now keep in mind, as projects are evaluated in an environmental document, the idea is not just to look at the environmental impacts that may result, but also to look at the applicants, in this case the city's objectives for, in this case, the specific plan amendment, the specific plan area. And keep in mind, key objectives had to do with creating the opportunity for a hotel, creating the opportunity for spillover economic benefits from SFO, creating the opportunity for long-term financial gain and a more sustainable economic future for the community. 3 alternatives were evaluated in the SEIR, in the environmental document. A no project alternative. Of course, the no project alternative, no project, would result in fewer environmental impacts, but also there would be no development on the site. So in terms of transit-oriented development and TOT tax, in terms of sales tax, property tax, these tax benefits would not come to the city. So that alternative really doesn't achieve the objectives of the city. And then a lesser development alternative was evaluated as well, a 140-room hotel versus up to 152-room hotel. And yes, that would result in fewer environmental impacts, but also less economic return for the city. The 152 or up to 152-room hotel opportunity for the future with mitigation measures would not result in any new significant adverse environmental impacts and would result in the most economic return of the alternatives evaluated in the environmental document. The Planning Commission reviewed this specific plan amendment and the SEIR and the information in your staff report. And the Planning Commission, although concerned about the reduced size of the project over what was originally anticipated here at the site, the Planning Commission did acknowledge the changing economic conditions over time and how we came to where we are today. And the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend to the City Council that you certify the SEIR and that you adopt the specific plan. And I'd like to point out that, in terms of the development in the specific plan area, in the crossing area, as we know it, there have been development and mitigation fees collected to a tune of about $1.2 million. There was $1 million contributed toward El Camino Real, Commodore intersection and signal improvements. There were, as I mentioned earlier, over 1,000 multifamily dwelling units created here in this community, 325 of which are affordable units. Also, the commercial development along El Camino Real, the El Camino Real commercial development, including the Jack's restaurant. As I've indicated, the environmental review has been completed. We do not anticipate, with mitigation measures, any significant environmental impacts, any new significant environmental impacts. In terms of fiscal impact of the specific plan amendment, again, we're looking at a specific plan amendment. We're not looking at a project at this time. At this time, the site is not developed. In the future, there would be the opportunity with a project to see or return to the city, but at this time, the site is undeveloped. Future development, though, we would anticipate would result in transient occupancy tax, sales tax, and property tax to the community. Tonight, the Planning Commission and the staff is recommending to you to go forward and hold your public hearing and adopt the two resolutions that the mayor cited in his introduction. One, certifying the final environmental impact report for the U.S. Navy site and its environment-specific plan amendment, and adopting environmental findings and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And two, approving an amendment to the U.S. Navy site and its environment-specific plan related to the Crossing Hotel site. We've attached the two resolutions along with the exhibits to those resolutions to your staff report. That concludes my report. Again, the preparer of the environmental document is here in the audience. Mr. Heisler and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for David before we open the public hearing? Ken?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So David, all we are discussing today is a revision to the original specific plan for a hotel. So
Yes.
any other consideration to say, let's talk about what else we could build, or cannot be part of this approval? So explain what it would take if a suggestion that we don't even consider a hotel anymore.
I'd be happy to respond to that. First off, as I indicated at the outset, and as you've alluded to, Councilmember, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to consider the specific plan amendment. You know, as I said, it's kind of truing up, in a sense, changes that were made in 2001 and 2005, and the resulting development changes that have occurred, resulting in the 1.5-acre site. At this point, the evaluation, both the evaluation in terms of the specific plan amendment and what could occur on that reduced area site, we've laid out in terms of specific amendments that would occur in the specific plan. This is not about a development project. This is about amendments to the specific plan that establish parameters for what could be a development project in the future, and an environmental impact report that evaluates the impact of those amendments. This is not about a particular development project. A particular development project would need to come forward separately in the future. It would need to be consistent with these amendments. It would go through its own review before the city's Architectural Review Committee, Planning Commission, and City Council.
But if I could follow up, that future project that would come forward would have to be a hotel.
Yes.
Okay. And if there was hypothetically, if the majority of this council said, okay, now that we have a revised or a supplemental environmental impact report and approval, it is zoned hotel for all intents and purposes, what would it take
Yes.
to change that use to
Sure.
say office?
I'll be happy
Or
to
whatever.
respond to that. So, as you indicated and I confirmed, this would allow for a future hotel to allow for a different land use. You mentioned office. There would be a need to amend the specific plan separately and further to consider an office use on this site and to do a related environmental review of that proposed use. So it would be a separate action. It would need to go to the Planning Commission and to the City Council at notice public hearings, and it would need to be supported by its own environmental document and review. That would be a completely separate action.
Anyone else? Questions for David? Michael?
Thank you. So I'm wondering, currently, the way it's set up right now, we've basically set it up for a much larger hotel. Now we're talking about scaling it back, but a lot of the language that I saw in there was up to a certain number, and there were no hard, in fact, numbers, but rather upper limits, and we're setting now lower upper limits. But I'm wondering why we couldn't just leave the plan as it is and still move forward with what's being proposed without making any changes to what's in there.
The current specific plan suggests a 5.5 acre site. It's not a 5.5 acre site. It's a 1.5 acre site. So in terms of the description of the site and what could be, it's not accurate. So a specific plan like this, a planning document like this, is used by developers, staff, decision makers, other interested parties. The current information does not accurately reflect either the site conditions or the potential project that could occur. So by amending this specific plan to acknowledge the changes that have occurred over time, the site area and the potential project and thresholds, provides a more accurate summation of what could be on the site and is really the appropriate thing to do.
If I may just follow up on that answer for a moment. So David is correct, but also in addition to that, it's important for the council to remember that just because the project is a smaller project on a smaller site than was previously envisioned, the city can't automatically assume that it's going to have no environmental impact. So in addition to that, since 2001, various standards have changed. For example, there was the requirement to analyze greenhouse gases. Air quality standards changed. So all of those things had to be taken into consideration, and that's the reason why a new, essentially full supplemental EIR had to be done. We couldn't just say, oh, it's a smaller hotel on a smaller site, there must not be any environmental impact. Those are really some additional reasons.
Okay. So if, as we move forward in our planning, if there was a plan to possibly take some of the developed area and encompass the hotel to merge into that somehow, or basically start over on some of those things, and we've locked ourselves down, then are we then going to have to go back through this whole process again? And really my point is this premature? Should we wait till there's a real project to look at and then go through this process? Or should we go through it and then possibly have to come back and do it again because we've painted ourselves into a corner?
I don't think we've painted ourselves into a corner. I think we're reflecting existing and current conditions. And as both the city attorney and I have said, it's kind of twofold. One, we're trying to present an accurate description of what's there and what's possible. We're also trying to make sure that in terms of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, if someone would come forward with a proposed project, they're positioned based on current knowledge of CEQA and the project and project area and other information that they could go forward. At any point, really, at any point in the community, somebody could come forward and request an amendment to a general plan or a specific plan that can be generated by the council, the commission, or privately. So if somebody would want to come forward and suggest something different, they could. And there's a process to do that. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a formal amendment process that would go before the Planning Commission and City Council. But in terms of where we are today, this specific plan amendment that's before you, it accurately describes the site, its conditions, its opportunity, and it brings us current in terms of the California Environmental Quality Act and its requirements. So it brings us current in terms of conditions and state law.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? This time we'll open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public like to address the council on this matter? If we close the public hearing, it's going to preclude you from speaking on this to us again. So any action by the council? Close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any further discussion or action by the council?
Okay, if I could.
Yeah.
I guess my comment, it's not a question, but I can really appreciate your summary as to what these 20 acres have produced to this community. I sit up here and remember 3 of these council members in 1999, seeing a former federally owned property, 20 acres, which was producing zero revenue for this city. And so what went through my mind as you were listing the entitlements that have come, the improvements that have come, 1,000 units, which we didn't think much of until now that we have a housing crisis. We've done our share as far as housing. The fact that we had to make tough decisions to do more housing because there was no market for office, and waiting for a vacant lot for a hotel over 15 years or almost 15 years. It just, what I'm proud of is that we were receiving zero. And even though we've gotten all these, and we've done entitlements, we've done subsidies for many of these projects, the property tax, the value of these 20 acres, even though we still have 1.5 acres of dirt, is really surprising even to me, knowing what's gone through. So I believe that we're still looking for that last piece of the puzzle for the hotel. And I believe, and I think it needs to be stated, at least from my standpoint, is that we've been watching these whole 15 years. We did not miss an opportunity. We were always watching, and the owners of the property, Ceres Regis and TMG developers, they wanted to back out, and every opportunity we said, no, we're going to stand firm. We will stand firm because we know this area, and we know that at some point San Bruno is going to have that opportunity. And I think that time has come. Mm-hmm. So even though it's not the flagship hotel, and I think we were setting our sights pretty high to have a Hyatt or a Marriott or something here, I think we're going to get something what we're proud of. So I will stop at that.
Okay. Anyone else? Any action by the council on these 2 resolutions?
I'll introduce the resolution if there's no further comment.
We need to do them separately, Mark?
Yes, please, through the chair, if you could do the first resolution being the one on the environmental impact report, and then the second one being the one on the specific plan amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce the resolution for environmental, for the environmental impact report, please.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
To introduce a resolution to amend the specific plan.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 9, public comment on items not on this agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and interaction where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone like to address the council under public comment? Just tell us your name and your street, please.
How you doing? My name's Roberto Don Lucas. I live on 5th Avenue. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm here to discuss the present issue of homelessness here in the city of San Bruno and to recommend some solutions to that problem. I've encountered and engaged with 30 unduplicated chronically homeless folks in the city of San Bruno. Now this number contradicts the 2015 San Mateo County homeless census, which states that our city only had 8 unsheltered homeless folks on the street. Also, many of these folks are suffering from severe mental health issues, chronic health conditions, and are battling with alcohol and drug addiction. And these people need help because it's very difficult to overcome those social issues on your own. And now we're entering an era where local law enforcement are no longer able to effectively deal with this social issue because you can't arrest your way out of this problem. Law enforcement tactics are costly and do not produce long-term solutions to ending homelessness in our city. And I had the pleasure of interacting with San Bruno PD, and they do a wonderful job, what they do. But I think they require a little bit of support on this issue. So here's the solution. 1, the city of San Bruno needs to reach a consensus and acknowledge that there is a homeless problem in our city. You accomplish this by acquiring data that proves there is a need. So you got to keep tabs of the homeless population that are in your city. Secondly, you develop a humanitarian approach to combat homelessness that incorporates social services and promotes assisting the homeless population that reside here in the city of San Bruno. The city of San Bruno also needs to strengthen its network and build relationships with outside social services providers. So know the key players that are around that help our homeless population here. Third, the key component to this initiative is to have an outreach case manager or boots on the ground interacting with the homeless population so they could build trust and rapport with the folks out there in an effort to engage them in social services and get them through the door, because there's a disconnect between our homeless residents and the social providers that are out there. So this will bridge the gap between that disconnect. So I hope this topic creates some discussion in the months to come, but we can't let this issue die down. I think we really need to advocate to get services into the city. I think the city deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us your name and your street, please.
Ryan Mersney, Keynes Avenue. I have several questions that the city manager and the city attorney have refused to answer, so I'd like to ask you. My first question is about the RFQ regarding the development of a hotel project at the crossing site in the city of San Bruno of October 2012. Since the original exclusive negotiation agreement expired, and since the previously selected developer requested a material change to the initially agreed upon terms, despite the record-setting improvements in the area's hotel market performance, was the issuance of a second RFQ required under either California law, municipal law, contract law, case law, or in any other binding authority. If the issuance of a second RFQ was at the city's sole discretion, who within the city and under what powers and what procedural process did such a decision to not issue a second RFQ get executed? My next question is, using the city's numbers of $3,896,000 divided by 43 residents, I understand the subsidy works out to $90.60 per resident. Is that correct? The city has refused to answer that question for me. Using San Bruno's numbers of $3,896,000 being paid back at $800,000 to $850,000 a year in TOT taxes, revenues, after the first 2 years of the hotel being opened. Over 5 years, you get 7 years after the hotel opens. If we assume the number of San Bruno as publicly stated are correct, and the hotel doesn't open until 2017, does that mean that there will be no positive revenue for San Bruno until after 2024? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. Marty Medina, Garden Avenue. I am running for one of the 2 seats on the city council, and I realize the financial benefits of having a hotel. My main objection is that the public should be allowed to see the financial justification in the report for giving nearly $4 million in financial assistance to a private developer. I understand the financial assistance report is in draft form and should be provided to the public at some point in the future, and I do look forward to that. I wanted to share with you one of my ideas that I came up with as I'm walking around town and knocking on doors and hanging door hangers. And it's a new San Bruno volunteer program. This program is one way our community can work together and help each other. Besides helping cleaning up neighborhoods, parks, and schools, this program could help seniors and others transform their brown front yards into drought-tolerant, beautiful landscapes. One brief announcement, the San Bruno Education Foundation is having their annual picnic on Saturday, September 20th from 11 to 2 p.m. Beckner Shelter. It's a day of food, fun, and games. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Item 10, conduct of business. We're going to look at adopting a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Atlas Pellizzari Electric, Inc. for the SCADA radio transmitter installation project in the amount of $143,219, approving a construction contingency of $20,000, approving a total construction budget in the amount of $173,219, appropriating $30,000 in wastewater capital funds, and reducing water capital appropriation funds by $30,000. Jimmy?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The city's capital improvement program includes the supervisory control and data acquisition, otherwise known as SCADA, radio transmitter project that will provide new secondary backup, data communication, and transmission service for all water and wastewater facilities. The city staff has been using SCADA system to remotely control and manage tank levels, water system pressures, alarm conditions, wet well levels, and pump operations at pumping facilities. It also allows staff to proactively address any potential system disruptions and continuous monitoring of the water and wastewater system without having to be on site at each facility. Currently, the city has two sources of data communication transmission for the water and wastewater SCADA systems. The San Bruno Cable Television Broadband Network is the primary means of data transmission that remain in its capacity. The secondary transmission service is currently provided through a dial-up modem telephone system. The dial-up modem system has been an issue and is currently non-operational at several water facilities or doesn't exist. When the primary cable network goes offline, the telephone network doesn't allow the operation staff to remotely monitor the facilities, meaning they can't see the SCADA interface on their computer desktop screens or laptops or even their mobile device to turn off or on the pumps or view tank levels, wet well levels, or monitor water pressures in the system. This project would replace the dial modem system with the new radio transmission network, which is the industry standard for SCADA systems. Back in January 27th, staff came to City Council to recommend an award to contract to EDCO Group, which includes the design of the electrical component and to determine the appropriate locations to best serve the communications at 5 wastewater facilities and 12 water facilities, and also at a corporation yard. The EDCO's contract included providing new touch panels, SCADA radio transmitters, the radios and antennas, performing radio surveys, and providing new programmable logic controllers to replace old units. At that time, the staff report also included information that a contract would follow for an electrical contractor to install the electrical components. This project is being recommended. The project that's being recommended tonight is for the electrical contractor's work. The current scope of work consists of the contractor to perform the installation of the communication equipment at all 18 locations. And all the electrical components, such as the conduits, antenna masts, and cables, will be installed by the electrical contractor. Staff advertised for bid twice in the newspaper, once on July 16th and the other on the 23rd. The 2 bids were received and opened on August the 4th. And the 2 bids were closely related to one another, about a difference of $5,000. The engineer's estimate was approximately $120,000 for this project, and the low bid received is approximately 19% above the engineer's estimate. And staff believe that it's due to the low interest in the project by contractors that have full work schedules. The apparent low bidder meets the contractor's qualifications and the requirements as specified in the contract documents, and their bid proposal was determined to be responsive and responsible. In addition to the construction price, staff is recommending a $20,000 construction contingencies to address any unforeseen conditions during construction, and $10,000 for project management and construction inspection. If awarded, this construction is anticipated to begin in October 2015, and the project, being that it's in the city's enclosed water and wastewater facilities, it won't impact any public right-of-way during the installation. As for the budget, the SCADA radio transmitter project has a total budget of $375,000 in the CIP program. Both the EDCO group and with the electrical construction contract and the construction contingency and the inspection and staff managed plan are all within the total approved budget in the CIP. However, staff is recommending a modification of the project funding sources to accurately account for the work split between the water and wastewater facilities. The reallocation of the cost is being done to better reflect the actual costs provided by the contractor. Currently, there's funding of $310,000 from Water Capital Fund and $65,000 from the Wastewater Capital Fund. Staff is recommending an appropriation of $30,000 in the Wastewater Fund for a total of $95,000 and reducing the Water Capital Fund by $30,000 to $280,000. With that, therefore, staff is recommending to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Alice Palizari Electric for the SCADA radio transmitter project. With that, I take any questions.
Good. Any questions for staff? Michael?
Chair, thank you. So when we looked at this before, I had concerns about spending money on basically a redundant system. This is the backup to a system that's fairly stable, and I know during an emergency we could lose that and we would want to have a backup thing. I just didn't see the need to expedite that at that point. So my complaint today is that I'm wondering why we couldn't have seen this whole the whole scope of the project at one time, and why we needed to wait until the first components were installed before we go back and look at the electrical and the antennas, rather than presenting this as here's everything that's involved in it, here's a total cost, and then kind of move down that path and getting everything done, rather than doing it piecemeal.
Great, that's a great question. One, there are two approaches to doing this project when we evaluate it. One is to hire an electrical designer to design the entire SCADA system and go out for bid at once. The other option is to have EDCO, who has actual experience with the city's SCADA system, as this company had already implemented the system for the city back in I believe 2008 or so. And so with that, with EDCO's experience, he has the knowledge of the city SCADA system, and we chose to come forward with the EDCO contract, since he's providing all the electrical components, or the SCADA components that is complementary to what is required, what will be easily integrated into the existing SCADA system. And so with that, he is providing the electrical services, which he did, design services, and we're going out with the electrical construction services at a later time.
Okay. So from reading this staff report, I'm getting that the work that we approved in January was related to replacing programmable logic controllers and other equipment, base equipment that was in there, and then this portion of it was the follow-up, which was electrical and antennas, which to me seems like it's not. It doesn't seem to me like it needed to be that sequential. I mean, if you got one team of people replacing the logic controllers, why not move ahead with? I mean, the antennas, I can't imagine are that complicated for these types of radio systems, where you would have to spend a lot of time planning out, how those are going to integrate with equipment. So maybe I'm oversimplifying it, maybe I don't understand the complexity of these systems enough, but it doesn't seem that hard to me. Any comment on that?
Yeah, the antenna and the conduit and the antenna cable are Echo is not a general contractor, so he can't install it. And so with that, an electrical contractor is required. And these antenna poles are, 15, 20, 25 feet in height, and it requires an expert, a contractor, general contractor to install it.
So why was it more efficient to have Adecco do why is this more efficient given that they're not a contractor? Could you have gotten somebody who could do both?
We could have got, if we had to go out and one company to do both, again, we would have to design it up front. Everything would have to be designed, and we would have to write the specifications and the technical specifications in so that, the contractor who is being selected would have to use the right component that is being supplied by Echo.
Okay. And I guess that's where I struggle with this, is that it does seem like we're going into this piecemeal, and we're designing kind of as we go, and we're building a piece, and then we're designing, we're building, we're designing, rather than having a complete plan and then going into it, where you can come to us and say, look, here's the whole vision, here's the design, here's what it's going to cost end to end, and let's talk about also maintenance and ongoing fees that are associated with this, which I don't know if there are any, but I don't see any in the report. So that's kind of my complaint. Is just I'm used to seeing projects done a certain way, and you guys do them a little differently, and maybe that's the way they have to be done, but I'm not getting it.
So let me try and answer the question in a little bit of a different way. Adecco was viewed as an efficient way to get this particular project done, and because they're not a general contractor and couldn't do where they can contribute their extensive knowledge of the system and our SCADA requirements, they couldn't. We got the benefit of that, but we were then having to trade that against the benefit of having somebody who's a general contractor. In other words, these things are not always simple and linear, but in this particular case, we made a decision to take advantage of Adecco's unique knowledge and their ability to promote efficiency in the design development, understanding that we needed to subsequently get a different contractor. A different decision might have been made, but we would have sacrificed efficiency on one end or the other of the equation. So we do make those analyses. I think I'm saying this correctly. We do make those analyses as part of our design and project planning development, and where we can use the type of more linear process or more consolidated process that you're talking about, we do. I think this project has what may not appear to be exceedingly complex issues is a little bit more complicated than meets the eye.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Rico?
The Vice Mayor had asked a question, I don't know if that was answered, is there other maintenance or costs?
No,
So what we have here is everything,
correct,
and going on and all of that.
correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Ken?
Hi. Unlike my colleague, the Vice Mayor, who probably would do this differently, I can get lost on this very easily. This is very complex to me. And I don't expect us to learn to be electricians or engineers, but I think there needs to be a middle ground. And so in the future, as much as you want us to support a project of this magnitude, even if it's piecemeal, you're going to have to explain it to a lay people. You're going to have to simplify it a little more, because I can read through this and you know how many times I can read it and still not get it. And so there's either a measure of trust, or there's going to be questions that are probably unwarranted, but we just want to understand, and we want to make sure that we're making the right decision. So if it's explained in the simplest form that this is the process that's going to happen, is that we have to go through process for EDCO and then come back with the general contractor, then I think it's going to be a lot more easier to accept. But again, we're smart people up here, but there's stuff that is just really another language.
Councilmember Ibarra, that's a good question. The concept, if you want to simplify this, the SCADA system is separate from the first part, and the second part are totally separate things. The SCADA system allows our staff to be able to remotely understand what's happening at each of these 5 wastewater and 12 water pump stations. Now, how actually that information gets back to us and goes back and forth between that corporation yard and each of these pump stations is the concern, which is the second part of the equation. The first part is that communication should be set up with this program. So all these equipment, all these logic panels, etc., has to be able to communicate with the corporation yard. Now, how do you actually do the communication? It's a totally separate part. You can do the communication via cable, which we already have, and we already have communication via phone lines. The problem with the phone lines is if cable goes down, the phone line is not two-way communication. The phone line just tells us there's a problem. But we won't be able to adjust the pumps. We won't be able to do anything further than that unless we send somebody actually to a pump station and try to do control manually. So what we want to do is the SCADA system has to rely on certain communication forms to be able to go back and forth between each of these locations and the headquarters, which is located at the corporation yard. So this is just a second part of it. You can have a different kind of communication, but the radio transmission is one form of communication. It's been very reliable. That's what the industry uses throughout the United States and overseas as well. And this is what we recommend as a second part of this SCADA program.
Through the chair, one argument I would have to that is that essentially in this report you're blending the two. So to say that they are separate is confusing because you're saying we need to replace antiquated touch panels and programmable logic controllers. So basically you're upgrading your SCADA in order to accommodate new communication. So to me that makes them completely one. It's one decision, because if we decide we don't want radios, then we don't have to upgrade SCADA. And so I don't see how you can separate them.
Rico?
I'm just going to chime in because I will echo what Ken said. The first question the Vice Mayor asked, and I turned to the Mayor and I said, I'm a little lost now. So I think the Vice Mayor brings up some great questions. I'm hoping, I don't know if you're more satisfied with some of the responses that you have, but I think going forward too, it helps us, I think, up here too, to understand the global picture first, and I understand you need to take it in pieces. It depends upon the project and as it's evaluated. But also when we see something coming back and we're starting to ask ourselves and we're trying to remember back, simplicity is great. The layperson needs to understand, and we need to be able to respond to the public when they start asking about our expenditures and what we're doing. So I'd like to echo some of what Councilmember Ibarra said as far as going forward would be helpful, and I appreciate the Vice Mayor's inquiries.
All right. Any other questions or comments or action by the council?
Through the chair.
Michael?
I still have my concerns about the expediency of this particular project, but it looks like the ship has sailed, and rather than leave this system half-built, I'll go ahead and throw my approval behind it, and with that, I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell. Aye. Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10B, adopt a resolution authorizing the closure of 1,200 lineal feet of City Parkway from 6 p.m. Friday, October 9th, 2015 through 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th, 2015 for the City of San Bruno's Community Day in the Park.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. In recognition of the community's enjoyment at last year's Community Day in the Park, The city will again be hosting the event on Saturday, October 10th. To create a better flow for the 2,000 to 3,000 people we anticipate will attend the Community Day in the park, and to better accommodate the rides and bounce houses, staff is recommending the rides be located this year on City Parkway, and that the roadway be closed from Crystal Springs Road to DeSoto Way from 6 p.m. on Friday, October 9th until no later than 9 a.m. on Sunday, October 11th. This closure would allow for the rides to be set up on Friday evening and then broken down after the end of the event at 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 10th. We do anticipate the rides will depart City Parkway probably by 10 or 11 that evening, and if that's the case, we'll reopen the roadway just as quickly as we can. We have coordinated with both police and fire, and an area of the length of City Parkway will be reserved for public safety vehicles to respond to any emergency. In preparation for the City Council's consideration of this item this evening, letters were sent to residents in the immediate neighborhood to advise them of the City Council's review of this matter tonight. If the City Council does vote to approve the closure of City Parkway, another letter will be sent to residents advising them of the road closure. This information will also be provided on the city's website and on Channel 1. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Carrie? Ken?
Carrie, did we have any, for the Posey Parade this year, we closed the street also. Do you recall any concerns from the neighbors or complaints? Is there anything more that we could do to probably alert the public that we're closing the street and detours?
In the 2 times that we've closed City Parkway during my tenure, we've not received any complaints, and we've not received any response and follow-up to the letters that were sent out last week regarding this evening's consideration.
Anything else, Rico?
Yeah, I was going to say there are some people I know, at least when I spoke over this weekend, that they had not received it, but maybe it's in transit in the mail. It just seems like a long time. I'm not saying it's not a nice event, don't get me wrong. But I know people may reflect upon, as Ken said, the Posey Parade, as well as last year, and we had a smaller window. And I don't know how many rides or what but I know it's obviously the way you just described it is because of the setup. You're utilizing the street instead of off the street, which has required the longer delay. Have we also looked at parking? Because I know last time we used St. Andrews, we used St. Roberts. I know if the conclusion is 5 o'clock, then obviously one of those churches is not available for parking. So have we looked into those other considerations?
We have. So last year, the council may recall that City Parkway was closed from 6 p.m. on Friday evening until approximately 5 p.m. on Saturday evening, the 29th of September. This time, we're suggesting that the roadway be closed for a little bit longer, and we're really giving ourselves a lot of cushion by asking for your approval to close the roadway until 9 a.m. on Sunday. We don't honestly believe that it will take that long, excuse me, to reopen the roadway, but just in case. With regard to the question that Councilmember Medina just asked, we ran into a little bit of a dilemma last year with the use of St. Roberts. We tried to plan for the parking and to have people who parked in St. Roberts out of the parking lot before Mass. Unfortunately, tragically, there was a funeral that was planned at the last minute at St. Roberts, and that created some traffic problems. So we're probably not going to pursue St. Roberts as a location for parking this year, although we will certainly talk with the church. We are in discussions with St. Andrews, and we'll continue to look for ways to accommodate parking the best we can, given the limitations.
Okay. Anything else?
And lastly, when do we anticipate really publicity on this event?
So that is actually already commenced. We have already or will be imminently sending flyers out to all the children at all the local schools. We've prepared the flyer. We'll be getting that on the website. The Patch has actually already run an article, Channel 1, and so forth.
Okay. Anything else? Action by the council?
I'll adopt the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell? Aye. Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar?
Aye.
Mayor Ruane?
Aye. Item number 11, report of commissions, boards, and committees. There aren't any this evening. 12, comments from council members. Anyone?
Through the chair.
Ken?
This is always a difficult time of the year, and I know you'll probably say something about tomorrow's tragic anniversary, but I've been sort of in a cloud today because today, September 8th, 3 years ago, a good friend of mine and a good friend of this community tragically died at about this time 3 years ago. Isaac Mejia was a true character. He was a great personality. He had a lot of spirit, and his generosity has been missed. And I just wanted to state that I think about him all the time, and we miss him.
Anyone else? All right. Closed session. There's no closed session this evening. This meeting is adjourned until September 22nd, right here.